get started now.
All right, yeah, we got 5 readers. Let's get started. I'm going to tell you about the first one. Our first one is one of my favorite people. Her name's Sara Button. She writes nonfiction, 3rd year. All right, let me tell you about her. Sara Button likes travel-sized toiletries. Who doesn't? Oh, I love that file. Collecting postcards in seasons other than winter. Recent achievements include 4th place in an Oscar pool and assembling 2 IKEA bedside tables, only one of which was lopsided. Let's give it up for Sara Button.
I came to dance, you. I hit the floor, cause that's my place. I'm wearing all my favorite.
I feel like we never read behind this thing. Yeah. Okay. Hi guys, thanks for coming out. I'm just going to read a piece of flash nonfiction that I wrote recently, and then I got a jet to work. So I apologize in advance for leaving early. I'm sure you'll enjoy everybody's readings.
She's not interested in any other reading.
Sorry. I am. Okay, so this is called The Turn. We collect smells like invisible trinkets. They are coins polished and stored to buy fleeting return tickets to my great-grandmother's detergent, to the old spiced armpits of middle school boys at the dance, to the warmth of butter, garlic, and onions sautéing while my father sips a cocktail and stirs, to the blooming orange blossoms on the street where I grew up, to whatever home smells like. I have learned its name, explicit odor memory. As far as we know, it's unique to humans and is the closest thing we have to a superpower. Smells transport us in memory. We time travel. Dysosmia is the distortion of one's sense of smell. The condition is relatively common, especially in the elderly, but an uncommon subset exists, troposmia, rooted in the Greek word for turn. This is the same root as entropy, tropical, and trope, the turning of language. Troposmia happens when a smell deviates from how one remembers it. Turn of phrase, turn of nose. It's summer in Pittsburgh and everything feels wrong. The weather is all wrong. It's not hot or dry or sunny enough. The landscape is all wrong. There are too many evergreens and not enough palm trees. No stunning sunsets with colors fading between jagged ridges. No cacti, no need for SPF 45 behind my ears, across my shoulders. I don't remember my first Pittsburgh rain, but I do remember thinking that the smell was all wrong too. A dingy smell that left nothing cleaner. The Sonoran Desert was our mother. She taught us children of the desert lessons, the 2 seasons, when it is hot and when it is hotter, when the saguaros bloom, when the palo verde are resplendent in their yellows. Our context is full of cacti and we memorize their names. Beryl, cholla, teddy bear, prickly pear. We make flour from mesquite beans and sweeten our tea with agave nectar. And in the afternoons during the hottest part of summer, dark clouds hover in stark contrast against our stucco roofs. Creosote bushes and thicketed washes emit a chemical, an indescribable musk. This scent cues us to the desert, to desert our homes and go outside. We inhale. The temperature drops 10 degrees to a more comfortable 95, and if the lightning is at bay and the rain is falling hard enough, kids go to the park and slide around in the wet grass. To me, to all the other desert rat children, creosote is the smell of home. My first trip back to Tucson, I go to a farmer's market. I'm surrounded by flip-flops, jean cutoffs, mesquite honey, and handmade tortillas. One stand's wares catch my eye. Creosote bomb, sample, printed across the silver tin. I unscrew the lid, breathe close to the yellowish bomb, and close my eyes. It smells right, like earth and rain. Memories rise. Waxy saguaro skin and their brittle skeletons, sand, red rock. Cool air and wood beneath my legs as I sit on our porch swing, my favorite place to watch the downpours. Pink fuzzy dice hanging from my best friend's rear view the afternoon we almost got swept down the street in her little Civic during a monsoon. We had pulled over and laughed and felt the water rush beneath us. I buy the tin. I buy time travel. Fall arrives in Pittsburgh in mid-September. We turn off air conditioners and shut windows. Moisture, heavy clouds threaten, and I put away my Birkenstocks. One of these first fall nights, I ask a friend what she thinks my creosote salve smells like. She can't place it, says she has never smelled anything like it. Finally, she decides. If a flower were a fruit on the vine, this would be overripe. She pauses and thinks. Sharp, not earthy. To her, it does not smell like home. Creosote is considered the most drought-tolerant plant in the United States, but the young plants, the ones that haven't quite grown up yet, must live 3 to 5 years through of cool and moist weather in order to thrive. It occurs to me that must be what I'm doing here in Pittsburgh. I'm learning what snow sounds like beneath boots, and that here rain is just rain, wet earth and asphalt. Thank you.
Sorry it's so hot in here, by the way.
Why?
Things going crazy,
It's horrible.
like sweating everything. Anyway, our next reader is Kamala Gopalakrishnan. In just the past week, second-year poet Kamala met Neil deGrasse Tyson for the first time, who asked her, "Isn't all thought poetry?" while he autographed her poetry notebook. Started working on a super secret project and watched a female silverback gorilla repeatedly vomit and swallow green and red paste while staring directly at her the whole time. The usual, of course. Please welcome Kamala.
Hello. How are you? It's getting warmer slightly, but raining, so all my boots are salty. So tonight I'm going to read, I believe 4 or 5 poems for you tonight. The poems that I'm reading are part of what we call in our manuscript workshop a chunk of about 10 to 15 poems that we're sort of starting to think about in terms of like collective order. So this is a really exciting project for me to work on, and these are some poems that are of course in their beginning stages, but I'm excited to read them tonight. All right, here is Stachybotrys Plague. Stage 1. Night forest yarn pulled out from sweater sleeves, its many tongues splitting when each loose end coils to the inner folds of my wrists. Stage 2. Thread-studded smoke sends forth poison plumes through programmed response to cloud the lung a new habit, make it host. Stage 3. Prognosis. The body becomes camouflaged, torn hibiscus background. How will the body pattern its own breaking? This one's called Wall Sound Theory. It's a very experimental poem. It can be read in at least 5 different ways. It's in it's in 4 columns, so you can either read it from left to right or from column to column, depending on your mood. But tonight I'm going to read from left to right. Wait sound, found sound, pine roll, basket sound, good morning sound, sound as a curled candle wax, curled tongue, sound of walk, no walk sound, forget this sound, shared wall gypsum lost through shared wall sound lost through gypsum, sound of gypsum in a blue room padded clocked sound, sound melt into tongue, shock tiny blue first melt memory sound. This one's called Probability Space 2. No one is meant to know what probability space 1 is. It's forever locked in secrecy, so you're just going to have to figure it out. Probability space 2. Time. A membrane juicing last night's dream. An era in which the burst and ground nasturtium became a mortar to thawed gravel. Only God can make a tree disappear. All the body blurs except my hands, still left in pockets, stopping milked thorn. The dream's hands are now squared, rejects all outcomes, forms its own stilled language left unstung. This one is Depression Weekend Montage, and this is something I feel like I'm in solidarity with, just with grad school in general, and winter, and just being, cabin fever, all of that. So I'm glad the weather is warming up, so that's no longer an option. I think I can finally go out walking and actually see the sun. That'll be interesting. It'll be fun. All right, Depression Weekend Montage. Mother on a screen again, and pearl-made afternoon light, tea falls down, bunched from marble edges. She was winter sky, ice-made petrichor. Sometimes light fog leaves my mouth on walks, and I walk underground, bowl stitched with sumac, rustle. One night the walls shook before I tumbled towards sleep, just so I could see 4 hours of light, to hear dogs howling with tangled foil gold balloons, to talk less about stone tunnels and time tunnels, swallowed stars. The next one I'm reading is called Shraddha, and it's in translation it means sort of the collective ritual of what happens when a mother dies, so the child is supposed to is an integral part of this funeral rite, and this is a poem about that. Shraddha. Reverse metal tick, flung water, tires loop left when it leaves the body, bend the 2-week ghost's ash, cooling bottom, shelled hair, or hands cut into half fans across my father's face, her skull silent against his lap, her body already bluing jasmine, ringed foot stamped with furnace silvering a controlled burn, all her silk under locks, spilt millet, that sugared grit in our teeth. So I've been working on this poem. I may have read it during the last speakeasy. Then it was called 1111. Now it's just 11, spelled out in the word. So I'm really looking forward to sharing this revision with you. Mother, you were born between palm leaf, stitched roofs, and 3rd floor concrete, named it Shakti, or resistant to earthquakes. You were a pool of maroon gold silk in the bottom bunk, born to a woman who sung evening crow calls. For 9 years, I called her Awa across terraces. She blamed your bad luck birth when she could no longer lick jaggery dust on curved lips, topping steel-topped tumblers. In the kitchen, she aimed one towards your left shoulder, but the mosaic sang, chewing dark balcony birds, their wings tossing wind. Even believed her words meant to be born in a still room when you leave open the Reader's Digest articles about possible genetic predispositions for becoming permanently unlovable. That happy birthday became songs of mourning, songs of thrown omen, songs of my blank face frozen on sick screens, of wanting to lay your head down on my lap to die. Song of I pray to my God. Song of your widow's peak, moving trains, snake shifting its flame path. Thank you.
We'll just play with the lights so they don't go off during the next reader. Okay, so it's my pleasure to introduce the next reader, Amos Barshad. Amos is going to come up here in a minute. Amos B. He's written for New York Magazine, Spin, GQ, XXL, 2XL, double XL, what's happening? And the Arkansas Times. He's a staff writer for Grantland. He's been very gracious with us today. He's visiting from New York, and he came to our nonfiction class and listened to our pitches, and was so nice to answer the first pitch with "sold," and made us feel so comfortable and helped us so much. So please help me welcome him up here. It's Amos. This music will play.
Yeah, I need that.
We'll just let it play a minute.
Yeah. This is just a good song. We should listen to it. We'll just go the whole 3 hours.
Yeah. We'll just play
Yeah, thank you to you guys and Gavin. Thank you. I had such a great day with the nonfiction group. That was super fun. Thanks for having me. Pittsburgh seems to be beautiful from what I've seen. So yeah, this is great. This is a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. I'm reading a thing that isn't a thing I wrote, but is like an email exchange I had with this guy that I met on Craigslist. And he was a dude who lives in Mexico City. Basically, I went to Havana in 2013 before the travel ban was lifted, so you had to go through wherever, but me and my then girlfriend went through Mexico City, and everything was fine on the way there. Basically, you just ask them not to stamp your passport, and they don't stamp your passport. But then we were like talking with people while we were there, and the woman we were staying with, and she was like, "Oh, everyone knows that. You don't need to even ask. It's fine." And we were like, "Okay, whatever." So on the way out, we didn't ask. I didn't get my passport stamped, but my ex-girlfriend did. So as soon as we were leaving the little, hut, we're like freaking out because if they see that, then there's all kinds of legal ramifications. I mean, at the time, I told her that I really wanted to go. And I told her like, "Oh, the worst thing that happens is they fine you. It's like $1,000 fine, like whatever." The truth is, like, I think it's like punishable up to imprisonment of some sort. I didn't tell her at the time. But that's like that's extreme cases if you're like smuggling stuff. But anyway, so we're like freaking out, trying to figure out what to do. We're gonna pretend to lose her passport. We're gonna pretend to do all this stuff, but like, luckily she kind of just smudged it right away, like as it was being, stamped down, so it didn't totally look like Cuban stamp. So our big plan was just to hope they didn't notice and drink on the whole way on the flight back. So that's what we did. And we get to customs in the U.S. and the dude flips through for like 2 seconds. I was just like rambling uncontrollably, and she was just like looking at me like, "Shut the fuck up, please." And the guy's just like, "You guys were in Mexico?" We're like, "Yep." He's like, "Cool, welcome back." Like, boom. We're like, okay. That was unnecessarily dramatic. But before that, I made her and us get rid of every like last piece of possible Cuban factoids, like anything they could pin on us. And the only thing I bought the whole time was this like really cool book of like trading cards, like colorful trading cards of like all the Cuban revolutionaries. I really wanted to bring it back, but we had to leave it. But I was like, I'm not giving up on this yet. So I left it at the hotel desk at the Mexico City airport. My big plan was to find someone to ship it to me in the U.S. So I didn't give up on it. I put up an ad on Craigslist, and I offered a whopping $20 to whoever would send it to me. And this guy Pablo hit me up, and we had an exchange that I'm going to share some with you now. Okay, so it starts out pretty normal. He says, "I can find, pick up, and send whatever you need. Just give me a description of the item or items you seek here in Mexico. I am 100% bilingual in English and Spanish, and I follow directions to the letter. Thank you." I'm like, pretty psyched. Like, this sounds like the perfect guy. I said, "Excellent. It's at the Holiday Inn Dali at the airport. It's an animated book, blah, 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 blah. I left it under my name. I just need you to pick it up and mail it to me." And then in parentheses, the cheapest way possible, because I'm going all out on this, to my apartment in NYC. I can pay you the $20 up front. I'm very generous. Then I can cover the shipping costs once it's in the mail. Sound good? It says, "Okay, I will go to the hotel, I ask the concierge, an item under your name. You know, once I have the item, I'll proceed to a UPS or DHL outlet and have the item shipped to your address. Is that correct? I'm just like, yes, like perfect. Yeah, you're killing it. So I go so far as to give him more more responsibilities. I tell him like, can you just give him a call at the hotel first? It should be at the concierge, but it's been about a week and there's a chance they've moved it elsewhere or possibly thrown it out. Let me know if they have it. You know, he kind of go back and forth for a bit, and understandably asks for me to confirm that, so I go ahead and do that. You know, we square away all these little things. You know, we have Thanksgiving, we get through Thanksgiving, you know, we finally talk again, and, you know, it's on. You know, it's been a lot of build-up, but it's gonna happen now. So I'm just like hitting him up, and he writes back, sure, it's a book, right? At the Holiday Inn Airport, right? You know, him confirming that it was a book at this point along the proceedings should have been a warning sign, but I just kind of rolled with it. I was like, okay, yes, it's a book. You know, what's your email? I send him the money on PayPal. And then I get this email back after a little bit, and this is when things got bad. He writes, I went to the Holiday Inn at the airport and asked for a book that was left there. I gave him a description of the book. I told him it was a book about Cuba. I mentioned my name and your name. The lady that was at the counter went to look for it. Then she spoke with somebody. She came back and told me they were looking for it. She said she remembered seeing the book, but that it was placed somewhere. She didn't know where, by which other employee. I waited for like 10 minutes. Then they asked me if I had a telephone number where they could contact me and if I had an ID. At that point, I just got fed up with the runaround and left. Tell this people at the Holiday Inn to confirm to you if they have the book or not. I will try one more time, but please make sure the book is there. So yeah, you know, it's not great, but it's not a total loss. And then he hits me up again because I was kind of like, you know, I'll confirm with the hotel because I haven't heard from you. I still have the information. There's something else you'd like me to send. You know, I call them back. I confirm they have it. Okay, confirm. You know, they know to expect you, and they ask that you bring ID. Then he stops responding. So I write, hey man, did you get a chance to grab it? He doesn't say anything. I say, hey, following up, any word? He doesn't say anything. And I go, hey, can you get back to me, please? He doesn't say anything. And then I say, beginning to feel like you're ignoring me? And finally he says, I apologize, I've been busy, what's the latest? I say, no worries, talk to them, they have it at the concierge, confirm, they know to expect you, and ask that you bring ID. When can you stop by? No word again. I say, did you grab it? You don't worry. I say, did you grab it? No word. I say, hey man, can you please get the book and ship it to me or return my money? Nothing. Hey man, can you please get the book and ship it to me or return my money? Nothing. Now I'm just like, just for the principle, I'm upset, you know? So I write, Pablo, what the hell? Pablo, man, what the hell? Still nothing. Please respond, send me my $20. And then I guess I kind of started losing it because I just write, Pablo, with a lot of A's and O's. Then just one that just says pa, and another that says blow, and then just a P, and then just an oblo. And so finally, after a while, he sends me this, and this is when it kind of gets dark. He says, okay, here's the situation. 2 problems. I've been visiting family in northern Mexico for the last 2 weeks, so I'm not anywhere near Mexico City right now. I was planning on returning next month, but that's now iffy because I've been offered a job here in Tamaulipas, Mexico, recruiting girls to work in a modeling agency. The job seems promising, so I might stay here. Your $20 have been spent. So they were spent that day that I went to pick up the book, and they were unaware, totally caught off guard when I visit, and they didn't know what I was talking about, and they asked for ID. Second problem, I don't have ID. I don't have an official Mexican ID, so that's the situation. I'm sorry, but I haven't been able to email to you because I haven't had internet access. I know and understand you sent those $20 in good faith, and I did attempt to keep mine of the deal, but things didn't turn out exactly as you had said they would. I can't return the $20 because they have been spent. But what I will do is still be willing to send you anything else you might need from here in Mexico. Specifically northern Mexico, because it seems that's where I'll be for some time now, recruiting girls. So I'm trying to salvage something out of it, and I say, okay, what is the best thing you can send me from northern Mexico? What is the greatest goods of Tamaulipas that you can send? And he answers earnestly, I can send you anything you want or need. If it can be found here, I can send it. I know you're probably a businessman. Very true. So if we can come to an agreement on whatever you need, whether it's an item, a product, or any type of information, I can put in the effort in finding it and sending it to you. You've already invested $20, and I want to make sure that money wasn't wasted, so whatever you want or need. Then this is where it really gets dark. Some of the things that I can send you are athletic performance enhancement medications, unique Mexican folklore art, original pictures and videos of real amateur female models doing what you want in front of a camera, and basically anything else you might need. Just give me ideas and suggestions of what you might need, and I will look into it. I owe you that. So now he's offering me drugs and like weird pornography, and I'm trying to get away from that side of things. So I just double down on the, I still want my money's worth, I guess, but I double down on the unique Mexican folklore art. So I say, how about unique Mexican folklore art? What is your favorite kind of folklore art? What do you recommend? He says, I don't know, I don't have a preference, I just know it's out there for sale. You can give me some ideas on what you would like to possibly get. I can look into seeing if I can find it for you. I can even take pictures of the items that are closest to what you were looking for and tell you the asking price. Very, very kind of him. Then I say, I appreciate that. Thank you, Pablo. How about paintings of horses, people riding horses? So he says, okay, so you're interested in finding some paintings, original, I assume, of horses or of people riding horses. Is that correct? 100% correct. You got it. He's back. We're like back now. He says, I found this fellow that draws and sketches anything you ask for. Any kind of drawing, he will draw it from his mind or from any picture or photograph you provide. It's great. $50 per original drawing. I say, oh wow, that sounds great. I just want to confirm. So I ask him, he's a unique Mexican folklore artist. Just so I have a better understanding of his strengths and weaknesses, can you ask him if he could possibly draw a man riding a horse, helmet on, a man riding a horse, helmet off, a dog on top of a horse, no helmet or leash, a dog and a horse side by side, neither riding one another. And he gets back to me and says, okay, I'll ask him to draw one of those drawings. I met him last weekend on the town square where he sits on a stool and sells his drawings. Today is a very cold day here in Mexico, so he won't be at the town square today, but I know where he lives. He gave me his address and I asked him so I can get in contact with him. He doesn't have a cell phone or Skype account. I will go visit him and ask him to draw you one of the drawings he requested. We get into some of the logistics of the money, $50. I send him 20 and he needs 30 more on top to get this going. I'll scan you the image and you'll ship the original, blah, blah, blah. So I still just want to kind of make sure, I'm like, great, what's his style of horse drawing? Here's an example of a horse if he needs one, and I send him a link to it. Two horses kind of kissing, and looks like it's a nice one. And he says, I'm going to talk to him this week and show him the picture of the horses. I'll let you know if he's willing to draw them. Gets back to me, yes, he will pencil, sketch, draw the horses, but he won't start until he sees the money that will pay to him up front. Again, very, very logical. And he says, I kind of stopped responding for a while. He goes, I hope you've been okay. I haven't heard from you. Again, very kind of Pablo. I say, how have you been? How is everything up north? He says, I've been okay, just getting by. I'm actually looking for a job. Do you know of any way that we can work together, you and me, to make money together? I'm in need of an opportunity. I really don't want to enter into the criminal life here in Mexico, which is so easy to do. And I say, if you pick up a book for me at the Mexico City airport, I can pay you $20. JK, winky, smiley face. And I say, I strongly encourage you to stay away from the criminal life. Do you know how to break dance? Just kind of throwing it out there. And he says, break dance, I dabbled in that when I was a kid. Why? Are you looking for someone that can break dance? I could probably find some kids or teens that might be real good at that. Are you looking for a specific talent? I can write short stories and such. I have a very vivid imagination. I can put those thoughts and ideas on paper. But to find someone that can take me seriously in that regard has proven to be very difficult. Writing something worthwhile takes time, and time is something that is really becoming more and more of a commodity these days. What I really need is a sponsor. Someone that is willing to sponsor me to write anything from a short story to a novel. For that sponsorship, I'm willing to sell a majority, if not all, of the royalties my written work produces. Let me know what you think of this. I'm also available for ghostwriting opportunities and any other opportunities except picking up books at Mexican airports. That might help me avoid a life of crime, become just another murder statistic in this country. He's really trying to tug on the heartstrings right now. Why don't we co-write a book together, you and me, a suspenseful international spy thriller where the protagonist character must either pick up an item in a public place in a foreign country or must convince a total stranger in that country to pick up the item for him in a public place. Like, I don't know, an airport maybe? No, we got like inside jokes together. Let me know what you think. Let's see if we can work something out together. I need to make some money before I end up at an airport begging people for money and for books. And then I just say maybe a screenplay, and that was it. I never heard from him again after that. Thank you guys.
That's awesome. All right, our next reader is Gabrielle Pastorek, and this is what she has to say. Because of the lovely fact that my reading will be a week before my 25th birthday, I'd like to share the best birthday present I've ever received. For my 11th birthday, I got a guinea pig, who I named Pokey after Pokey Reese. He used to play for the Pirates. Later, I found out that Pokey wasn't his real name, which was a total drag to find out. And that, according to Wikipedia, he got his nickname as an accident. This is quoted from Wikipedia. Reese got his nickname Pokey because he was an obese baby and his grandmother was going to name him Porky but accidentally called him Pokey. Also, in unrelated news, this is her last speakeasy ever. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Don't get it twisted.
Thank you for that introduction, Cam. I'll just get right into it. This is my newest piece that I wrote for my manuscript that'll be allowing me to graduate, hopefully. And it also falls last, I think, in the order, so maybe it's a little bit special in that regard. It's called King Rat. The sun's just getting up over the front pasture, and I'm already ankle deep in the manure pile, trying to push the busted-up wheelbarrow through the frost-covered, half-decomposed shit. The trick is to build yourself a shit ramp, using the dry stuff on top as sort of a pathway to get to the far side of the pile. Then you can dump and work your way back towards the front, where you'll make another shit ramp, and so on. When it's frost-covered and frozen, though, you've got to do some digging, or sometimes even kicking with a solid steel toe to build that ramp. Then, especially if you're kicking, the other trouble is your socks. In the winter, you've got to wear a good pair of thick wool ones, but they slip. It's gradual at first, but by the time you realize it's happening, the sock's down in a clump at your ankle and you feel the first flake of shit make its way down the wool folds and settle between a toe, or if you're lucky, get stuck at your ankle. I don't mind it though, being a shit kicker. I come from a long line of shit kickers, dairy farmers. The work and the dirt itself are calming, really. There's something about physical labor that's sort of like singing yourself a lullaby. After a while, you carry yourself right out of the shit pile, and all of a sudden you're somewhere else, anywhere. Could be your grandmother's kitchen with ceramic ducks lining the top of the cabinets. Could be the guy you'll see at the laundromat on Wednesday when you sneak a pile of dirty horse blankets in after midnight and he pretends not to notice. Could be the cold chicken you had for dinner last night. But what starts to wear on a person isn't the dirt. It's the infinite pointy noses peering around the corner, perfectly groomed ponytail swishing towards you, the click of polished leather that cut right out of that song, and all of a sudden you notice the flakes of shit in your socks. It's Christmas Eve morning, and by the time the sun's up, every ponytail in the place wants to pet her horse, wants her stall double-bedded. This blonde one, Tamsin. If that isn't a nose in the air kind of name, damn me to hell. Tamsin does this routine in the mornings where she gets there around 9:30 and does a double take when she sees me in one of the stalls. Wow, early bird, she says. Here at 5 every day, 24/7, Christmas and Easter. Then she laughs like I'm joking, even though I say the same damn thing every time she makes an early bird comment. One time I told her she was saying it wrong, that it's actually early bird guts the worm, and she pushed her nose way up in the air and said, well, even if it is, that's not how I'm going to say it. I don't know where I got that, about the bird gutting the worm. Probably from one of those stories my grandmother is always telling me about the farm she grew up on. She's funny like that, my grandmother, because you're never quite sure what's real or not, but damned if that woman can't tell a good story. Well, since you're here so early, Tamsin's saying, could you double bed, Frost? It's Christmas Eve. Yeah, I know, I tell her. I think maybe she thinks I spend so much time shoveling shit I don't know about civilized things like Christmas Eve. But nobody's getting extra bedding. I'll be here in the morning, same as always. Any extra I put in, I've just got to take out tomorrow. She sticks her nose further into the stall as far as she can get in without stepping in herself. You know, Christmas Eve is about the animals, she says. I toss a clump of red piss and hay into the wheelbarrow outside the stall she's almost standing in. They get extra grain tonight, I say. They'll be fine on bedding until tomorrow morning. Well, she says, at the very least, could you check Frost's water bucket? Last I'd seen, he'd messed in it. She flips her hair in the opposite direction and starts toward the back of the barn where Frost's stall is. Frost is her ill-mannered doppelgray Arabian. My grandmother says Arabians are about as useful as cardboard soles in your shoes. She always tells me about how when she and her 8 siblings were growing up, they had to walk to school carrying cardboard cutouts at the bottoms of their shoes in their coat pockets in case it rains. Cardboard soles are a hell of a lot cheaper than mending 9 pairs of worn-out shoes, you know, she says. Her father, my great-grandfather, raised dairy cows, and they had 2 plowing horses, White Horse and Brown Horse.
When I get to feeling especially kicked around, I drive to my grandmother's house at night after evening feed. She has insomnia, my grandmother, just like I do, so she doesn't mind if I stop by at night, just so long as I holler up the stairs that it's me before I come up. That way she knows if she needs to pull the shotgun out from under her winter sweaters in the back of her closet or not. She says she hasn't locked a door in 72 years and she's not fixing to start now. That's what the Winchester's for. She doesn't hunt or anything, and my grandfather's been long gone before I even got here. Anyway, I was there all last night. Grandma and I fell asleep together on the couch in the living room. She'd fixed me a plate when I got there, but I was too exhausted to touch much of anything. So she told me about the wood stove. She's always telling me about this wood stove her mother had out back between the house and the horse barn. You wouldn't believe the smell, she tells me. You really wouldn't. You walk past that wood stove and boy, you can smell that bread. There's really nothing else like it, the smell of a wood stove. You helped her? I asked, even though I already know the answer. I hear about the wood stove a lot. What would be in charge of with Shep? That's how we helped. You weren't allowed near that stove, nuh-uh. Shep was their dog. I still can't get a straight answer about what kind she was, only that she was probably a shepherd. Yeah, old Shep, she says, you know, she spoke Italian. That right? Oh yeah. She was doing something she wasn't supposed to, like dig around in the beans. She used to like to dig around in the beans. All you had to do was yell, Mama, guarda il cane. That's look at the dog. And old Shep boy should stop dead in her tracks and look up at you with those sorry eyes dogs have. I swear she told me sorry once, told me not to tell my mother. Anyway, we talked about Shep for a while after dinner, and then she fell asleep on the couch. If not for Tamsin's Pantene hair wafting to the last stall, I'd be done by now and could move on to the next thing. That's the thing about barn work, there's always a next thing. I guess for the same reason I told her about the bird gutting thing, to give her a hard time, I step out of the stall and call down the owl toward her. You mean shit, I say. She spins around on her polished leather heel, that ponytail damn near smacking her in the face, and hisses a mousy, excuse me? You mean shit, fresh shit in his water bucket. She sort of gently grunts, if you can call it that, and continues walking away. I hear her mumbling something about being raised in a barn, but I let her go. I was raised in a drafty old farmhouse with ceramic ducks lining the kitchen cabinets. My grandmother tells me there are two kinds of people in this world, rats and Englishmen. If you're not one, you're the other. When I tell her about the water buckets and Tamsin's pretty little ponytail, she tells me about these cardboard tools she used to carry in her pockets. When it rained, boy, we used to swim like rats to the schoolhouse, she says. Those Americani would drive right past us and would have to try and dodge the puddles before they got close enough to splash us. Then by the time we got to the school, they'd be sitting at their desks already, dry as peacocks. They'd watch us walk in, soaked from head to toe, and call us dirty rats. And we were dirty. My last stall of the day is always an old bay mare with one of the worst swaybacks I've ever seen. Brownie's her name. She's retired now because of the swayback and will likely live out the rest of her days carefree as anything. I'm particularly fond of old Brownie, maybe because she doesn't raise hell when I'm picking her stall, but maybe even more so because there's this glint of humor in her eyes when Tamsin pokes her head in to let me know her Arabian mess somewhere. I like to tell my grandma about old Brownie, partly because she reminds her of Brown Horse from growing up, and partly because she was one of the nicer parts of my day. We have this thing, me and Graham, where we don't always like to be talking about bad things that happen to us, so I always try to get in a little story about Brownie. Sometimes I'll tell Graham about how I'm going to buy up her old farm one day. It went to her oldest brother, who sold it to some dope heads who don't know like about owning a farm. And I tell him I'm going to buy it up, then buy up old Brownie, and we'll be halfway to having a brown horse and a white horse of our own. Brownie's been a little off lately. It's cold. She doesn't get turned out in the winter because there's too many ways to break a leg up there in the snow and ice for someone her age. So it's not exactly unusual that Brownie's a little out of it. Probably bored stiff. I can tell she's been cribbing all morning. That's when they get bored and start scraping their teeth against something. Well, I can tell she's been doing it because of the big chunk of wood torn out of the side of her stall. But at least she's breathing. As long as you hear that calm, easy breathing, you know she's going to last the night. My grandma taught me that, how to tell if an animal's going to make it through the next night by the way it's been breathing that day. Said she learned it from her father when old Shep got to be the age where you start paying attention to how she's breathing. Would beg my papa to let Shep sleep in bed with us, she says, but every day he'd tell us, no, you can see her in the morning. And as sure as shooting, she'd be wagging her tongue at us the next morning when we went out to milk the cows. And then there was one night And then there was that one night when he took her off of her chain outside and let her crawl into bed with us. That was how we knew. Then it's the sound of Tamsin's pretty little boots clicking down from frosted solid brownies, and I squish my toes in my socks. I would switch them out myself, she tells me, but the hose doesn't reach. Sometimes her dopey-looking linebacker of a boyfriend comes with her and pretends to clean out frost buckets or to do some common sense stuff. But the last time he was here, he managed to crack both the frost buckets trying to unfreeze them, it said. But what he really meant was bust them off a cement mounting block to try to get the solid half-ton block of ice out of the bucket. I want to ask her where her football star boyfriend is to smash these ones, but I just nod and flick a pile of wet bedding into the wheelbarrow. If it's not one thing, it's another. Graham says if you've got to be a rat, you might as well be king rat. She gets that from a story she tells me when I get to feeling especially lousy, about how one day, after getting splashed with puddle after puddle, my great uncle, her brother Gino, stood up on top of his desk, water dripping down from the tip of his big dago nose, and told this boy named Richard Thomas to shove his American accent clear up his ass. Then when my Uncle Gino was on his way out after being kicked out of class, old Richard Thomas had the nerve to call him a rat. Gino, boy, he had that fight in him. Could be mean as anything, Graham says. He whipped around and gave it to Richard, square in the jaw, stood right on top of him with his arms sort of proud on his hips, and said to old Richard, "That's king rat to you." Then I guess he got escorted out of the schoolhouse, and boy did he get whooped good when my father heard about it. I'll get to it, I tell Tamsin when I look up and she's still standing in front of Brownie's stall. She taps her foot against the concrete aisleway. "Well, I hope it won't be too long," she says. I always think about knocking her square in the face when she says stuff like that. Think about the story I could tell my grandmother, how it was just like Uncle Gino, king rat and all that. But the best I ever seem to be able to do is give her a quiet nod and try my best to ignore her shadow creeping into the stall. I said, I hope it won't be too long. Well, it's not on purpose, but she's standing there in front of my wheelbarrow waiting for me to confirm her existence, I guess. And I'm flicking wet, heavy bedding into the wheelbarrow over my shoulder like I do about 1,000 times over and over every morning. And it just so happens that she's standing right where I need to be flinging. So a fork full of Brownie's wood bedding lands square on her chest. The scream startles Brownie, and anyone else might have kicked out, so I'm thankful I'm in her stall, not someone else's. "What a classless thing to do," she yells over a water bucket. "I mean, really, I've lost the last shred of respect." "It wasn't on purpose," I say. "Why would you stand right in front of the wheelbarrow?" Brownie snickers, I swear. She's poking her nose out the window that looks out into the back paddock, and she's snickering. So I start in on it too. Now Tamsin's really screaming, and I check to make sure Brownie's ears aren't pinned like she's going to kick out. She's still leaning out that window, still snickering. Trash. Total and complete trash. I used to think it was a shame seeing you muck stalls for a living, but this, really, I mean, come on. "What's a shame," I say, "are your boots." I nod toward her newly saddle-soaked pair of Ariat riding boots covered in a fresh pile of Brownie shit. Her gaze follows my nod, and she looks up at me like she wants to throw a punch, but I know she, just like me, will never do it. I guess that's one thing we've got in common. She turns and huffs her way down to the wash rack where we bathe the horses. Lucky for her, they've got hot water. This is one of those things I don't tell Graham about. I don't tell her about the laundromat on Wednesdays because she doesn't agree with wrecking washing machines that aren't mine to wreck. And I don't tell her about Tamsin calling me trash. By evening feed, when everyone's long gone on their way to Christmas Eve Mass or some warm fireplace, and everything's back to calm, to peaceful, I'm in a better mood. It's my favorite night to feed because they get extra and they all seem to know something's different. Something about the snowfall, the wind maybe, the way I'm moving. With a slow calmness instead of the sometimes rapid-fire dump, dump, done I sometimes fall into the habit of doing, especially when it's cold like this. So even if I've been slinging shit all day, and even if Tamsin seems to care so much about how I grew up, I'll have a story to tell Graham. I'll tell her about Brownie's good humor, the farm I'm going to buy up. Sometimes she asks me why I stay here, tells me she can help me make it along until I find somewhere else to work, that kind of stuff. But I tell her it's the sudden silence that makes me stay, when the only sounds are the occasional scrape of teeth against a salt lick, or the remnants of chewing left over from extra grain on Christmas Eve. When the warmth of their bodies is enough to heat up the whole place, sometimes it's enough to let you take your gloves off, put your head down. It's the buzz of fluorescent lights. Maybe it's one or two of them is burnt out, so it's not So it's not an all-over uniform type of buzz. It's a little louder and your left ear turned one way, your right turned another. It's the smell of freshly laundered blankets, the dirt stuck beneath your fingernails, the quiet of snow falling. But above all that, if you really want to know why I stay, it's their breathing. Calm, quiet, the snort, quiet. You hear that and you know you're going to make it through the night. Thanks.
All right, our final reader for the night is Scott Romani. Let me tell you about him without accidentally playing Sarah's walk-on music. Okay. All right, Scott Romani. He's from Philadelphia. He was a dance major in college. His first publication is forthcoming in Blotterature. He likes to perform country ballads out of tune at karaoke nights. This is my kind of guy. Listen to this. Angie Cruz has said that uncomfortable sex scenes are his thing. Cookies! Let's bring Scott up here.
All of my music choices were super good. But this was the gayest. Thank you for that, for choosing that one. Yeah, so it was really tough picking something to read because Angie has gone around saying this about me. And so I really wanted to read something that's uncomfortably sexy. But since we're being filmed, hi Mom, I can't do that. So I guess all you really, I'm going to read a scene from my novel. And I guess the only thing you really need to know is that the main character, Gil, he lives with his aunt and uncle, with his brother. And he's sort of been hanging out with this guy who works at a radio station, plays country music, and he's about 20 years older than Gil. And this is like their first night out together. Also, there's like a little chunk missing from this scene for the sake of time. But you guys are smart, you'll figure it out, something about an ID, because he's underage. Okay. Gil followed the radio host to a bar down the street. A building in the middle of the block with no windows that he hadn't noticed before, with a tiny sign over the door that you would only catch if you knew to look for it. It said Trinkles. It was dark inside, with a few Christmas lights hanging above the bar, and the music was loud, thumping throughout the building, the bar's pulse. How hadn't he felt it on the street outside? The place wasn't very wide, like a thin slice of cake, but it seemed to never end, it went so far back. The only women in the place were men in dresses wearing pounds of makeup. Alan guided Gil through the crowd of curious men, old men and young men, men in dresses, all following him with their eyes, never breaking their focus, staring, looking, and he ordered 2 rum and diets. You like that, right? Gil nodded, looking around at everything. The man with a wig that looked like a beehive on his head, the man who must have been 7 feet tall and was wearing a jean jacket intended for a girl almost half his size, his mouth slightly open as he took it all in. I can't believe you've never been, Alan said. Don't you just love it? How could he have missed it, all of these weeks, going to the radio station and spending time with Alan? How could he not know all of the attention? Did Alan want him to? Was this his way of saying it? Had he been saying it all along? Gil sipped the drink that had been placed in his hand. It burned his throat and he wanted to spit it out. This caused him to choke and cough. Too strong, kid? He laughed. Guess they don't teach you how to drink in homeroom. I'm sorry, Gil said through another cough. I didn't mean to lie. Don't worry about it. We've all been there. Boys will do much worse for much less. You'll see. His voice was somehow different. He was different. As if walking through the door triggers a new you, the real you. This was Alan Cantor. Gil wanted to learn everything about Alan and the life that he lived, this one he had kept secret until now. He was a celebrity, the radio man. Everyone knew him and waved to him, and while Gil was at his side, everyone wanted to know him too. Then the lights dimmed and a voice came from all of the speakers. The show's about to start, bitches. Make your way to the stage. The MC entered the center of the floor. The baritone voice that had been calling everyone to gather over the speakers did not match the leather bodysuit, knee-high boots, and ponytail extension he was wearing. She was wearing. Misha Mark was her name. But you can call me M&M, she said, like the candy, only sweeter, an emphasis on the The crowd hooted and hollered after almost everything Eminem said, and when they didn't, she held the microphone away from her, the other hand on her hip, and pointed it toward the crowd with a pout on her face, heels inverted, hips sticking out to the side. The crowd roared and even Gil clapped. A man dressed like a pregnant bride performed a medley of Madonna's greatest hits. As she danced around, people offered her dollar bills, threw them on the floor, put them in her fake cleavage. When Like a Virgin came on, she yanked a pillow out from her white dress, and dollar bills came spilling out all over the floor. A short boy with no shirt came running behind her and started picking up the cash. He swatted away the hands of the people in the audience who tried to get some for themselves. That's her boyfriend, Alan said, but he acts like her stage mom. Gil wanted to ask more. He wanted to know what it was like between two men, what it was like between two men when one dressed up like a girl. But he had already embarrassed himself enough with the fake ID and the drink, and he didn't want Alan to change his mind, send him home. So he just watched the show and tried not to look like every fiber of him was coming into place. It was like watching a home video after you've lost all of your memories. You recognize it, you think it's you, it should be you. Why isn't it you? But somehow it's not. Somehow this is the first time. Every time someone new walked on the floor, Alan got real close to Gil and told him who they were over the music, whispering in screams. His lips were so close to Gil's ear that if he moved even slightly, Alan would be kissing him on the cheek. This fact made him aware of his entire body. "That's LaDonna," Alan whispered to Gil when an overweight drag queen came on the floor. The colors on her face were bright and thick, almost like a clown. He's so ugly, the only time people will let him kiss them is when he's wearing makeup. Every so often, LaDonna would reach out into the surrounding crowd and grab someone's face, pull them in, and plant a sloppy kiss on their mouth. Her victims were covered in purple lipstick smeared across their face and walked around the rest of the night pointing to their mouth and saying, "Can you believe it? Can you believe it?" Gil wanted to be marked. He wanted some way for people to know he was one of them. He stepped a little forward and waited for LaDonna to pull him in, but she never did. Everyone sang along when songs they knew played from the speakers in the bar, dancing, filling it with so much sound that you could almost feel it as you moved, like pushing through invisible music jello. People said hello to Alan when they passed. They kissed cheeks, twisted nipples, and spanked butts, all in jest and camaraderie, for show, for fun, because they were friends. This is how we shake hands. This is how we say hello. Alan told Gil their names and how he knew them. Oh, how Gil wanted to know them. The drag queen that performed a Cher song, dressed in a tacky ancient Egyptian costume, walked right off the floor as the song was still playing when he saw Alan. They embraced, and he quickly turned to Gil, introducing them. Her name was Clementine. The three of them walked over to the bar to get another drink. "Holding an empty glass is like going to the prom without a date," she said to Gil as they walked. "Go stand next to an old man when you have a few sips left and wait for him to offer you more. Young people should never buy their own drinks." Clementine also knew everyone in the bar. As the pair walked through the crowd, Gil following behind, people waved and tried to stop them. They were like a float in a parade. "During the day," Clementine said at the bar, "I work at a law office down the street. His name was Clement and he was a legal aid. He wore a suit and combed his hair, but at night he put on gowns and wigs and performed at bars all over western Pennsylvania. Sometimes I drive for an hour on the turnpike to little hick towns and perform at dive bars. I tell them I'm Miss Whatever and they pay me like $200 to host or close a show." And then she said, "If you think the queens in this bar are bad, honey, you should see the Hicktown queens. They use markers for makeup." "I think they're pretty good," Gil said. He sipped his drink and it burned as it went down. His head started to feel light. "Oh, you should have told me. Well, you have your drag queens, the impersonators of all your divas, like..." "Oh, sorry. This is Gil's first time," Alan told his friend. "Oh, you should have told me. Well, you have drag queens, the impersonators of all your divas, like Babs and Judy. And then there's originals like me." He framed his silhouette with his hands. "You have your old men, like this one over here." "Speak for yourself," Alan interrupted. He poked Alan in the shoulder. "They're easy enough to spot. Same with your twinks and your butch lezzies." "Twinks?" Gil asked. "You're a twink, don't you know?" Clementine said. Gil looked up at Alan. He winked and whispered, "Young and small." Gil blushed. Then you have your trannies and your crazies. Ain't nothing wrong with a tranny, but you gotta stay away from the ones with a little crazy. They'll get you like a nun at Sunday school. Stop, you're scaring him, Alan laughed. Here I've been going on this whole time. What about you, Gil? He's quite the music genius, Alan said. He's been helping me at the station, but he won't tell me how he came to know so much. Oh, I love a good secret, Clementine said. Then the music changed and a new performer entered the floor. Look, it's Moody Mary, Clementine said. Alan leaned into Gil and told him she works at the local college in the theater program. Her costumes are always the most lavish and detailed. She makes them all by hand. Clem hates her. Well, I think that's cheating, she said. From the bar, Gil couldn't see behind the bodies surrounding the performers. Why Alan and Clementine talked about Mary Martina, who Gil later found out was named after a famous Broadway performer, Gil climbed on a bar stool and stood on his knees. He looked above the crowd. Her dress had all kinds of beaded patterns, each a different color, traveling up and down the evening gown and ending in a cluster of swirls and random spots. It fit her perfectly and looked much better than the Egyptian concoction Clementine was wearing. Gil looked around. There was a whole world he had never known right in this little bar, only a few miles from where he grew up, and he was one of them, waiting like a superhero for a radioactive spider or a teacher to show him his powers, to make him who he was going to be. Alan was that for Gil, and Gil would do anything to be one of them, to belong here in this bar. He drank it all in with his rum and diet and tried not to cough from the burn.